Okay, guys, I'm back with Lily to the rescue. Last time we read chapter 6, and remember, Maggie Rose and her family are trying to figure out how they can release Casey back into the wild. Casey doesn't seem, he doesn't seem to want to go. Okay, chapter 7. We went to a park. It was not the kind of park where dogs are allowed to run without a leash. That made it not the best kind of park, but still there were many smells, and there were trees, and there was a big pond. And I noticed that there were a lot of birds. There were birds floating in the water, and there were little birds in the trees, and there were groups of crows that were on the ground poking at the dirt with their beaks. Dad set Casey's cage on the ground, and Casey was so excited that he opened the door himself and jumped out. "Wow," Dad said. "I didn't know Casey knew how to do that." "You're a smart bird, Casey," Maggie Rose called out. Casey was obviously very interested in the crows that were across a big lawn. He kept looking at them, cocking his head to one side and then the other, the way he had done when he first met me. After a time, he hopped up and flew a little closer to the big group of crows. They ignored Casey, probably not realizing what a special bird he was, and that he had a dog for a friend. Maggie Rose and Dad walked around pointing at birds, and Brian and Craig threw a ball to each other. I decided to stick with the boys, and sure enough, Brian dropped one of Craig's throws, and then we had a lot of fun playing "Chase Me, I have Brian's ball and you don't." Craig and Brian kept yelling, "Drop it, Lily," which I decided meant, "Keep running with the ball, Lily." Eventually, I let the boys tackle me and take the ball out of my mouth. "Yuck," Craig said. It's covered in dog spit." I wagged at the word dog. I trotted over to be with Dad and Maggie Rose because they were down at the pond watching the birds float. After a little while, I noticed that Casey had hopped closer and closer to the other crows. I wondered if he was making friends with them. I wonder if they would let me make friends too. The trouble was, I did not know any crow games other than the one where Casey would ride on my back. There were many, many crows, and I did not think that I could hold all of them up on my back. And then I saw a dog running across the park. It was a brown spotted dog who was dragging his leash. "A Springer Spaniel," Dad said to Maggie Rose. "That's a bird dog, bred to hunt birds with his owner. See how excited he is with all the birds in the park? He probably yanked the leash right out of his owner's hand." I watched as the brown dog very rudely ran right into the middle of Casey's friends. They all took off into the air, Casey included. They flew around the park in a big open circle, and then they flew up into the air over the trees and went away. "Bo, come back here," a woman was yelling. She had her hands on her hips, but the brown spotted dog didn't seem to know what that meant. He didn't seem to know that it meant he was being a bad dog. I knew though, so I pressed against Maggie Rose's leg, being a good dog, and I waited for Casey to return. But Casey did not come back. Dad called the boys and we all went to the car. I noticed Maggie Rose had her head down as if she were watching for something to happen on the ground. When we got to the car, Casey was not in his cage. I realized then that he was going to stay with his crow friends. Maybe they would all find some chipmunks to play with. I was very sad. Maggie Rose was my best friend in the world, but Casey was my bird friend. I had not realized how much I enjoyed being with Casey until he left. "I know you were sorry to see Casey go," Dad said to my girl, "but believe me, this is the best. It's your mom's job and mine too. We take care of animals and we help them get better when they're sick or injured, and then we release them back into the wild." "Except puppies," Craig said. "Right," Dad replied. "Dogs can't live in the wild, so your mom finds them homes." "And cats," Brian said. "True enough." "And monkeys," Craig said. He laughed. "Whales, dolphins," Brian hooted. "If I come across a whale up in the mountains, I'll do my best to find it a good home," Dad chuckled. Both boys were laughing, but Maggie Rose was sad. She could probably feel the emptiness in the cage behind us just as I did. It felt as if Casey were still in there, but every time I checked, he wasn't. Casey was gone. I hoped Casey would be happy with his new friends, but I was sure he would miss me, just the way I was missing him. Why was Maggie Rose sad? Think about that, and I'll see you next time for Chapter 8.